Appetite is actually the very first story I ever had published, and right from the start it's tended to polarise readers' opinions, typically along gender lines. I guess the simplest way of describing the story is to say it's a retelling in a modern environment of Little Red Riding Hood, but from the wolf's perspective. I was meant to be delivering a bag of groceries to Susan's mother, like Little Red Riding Hood on an errand. I veered off the path to take a leisurely route through the park, and then drifted through back streets towards a cafe I knew. I saw Guy. We knew each other well enough, but I didn't really count him as a friend. Everything tastes drab these days, he said, bypassing the more common greetings like hi or hello. Guy was draped over his stool, leaning against the wall in an exaggerated fashion. He looked lopsided, as though he were preventing the walls falling in. He told me the food had too much salt and it caught in his throat. Even so, he seemed to bolt it down. Pull up a chair, he did it for me. You're turning inside out. How do you mean? I said. He looked at me carefully, as though deciding how much of a start to give his prey. I stole a glance at the doodle on his pad. It was a row of serrated teeth spiralling from a gaping mouth. Do you like women? He asked. I'm married. So? He paused for effect. Every woman has something appealing, some quality. It could be the way she smiles, a pattern of speech, maybe the way she tilts her head. It's easy to love a woman. Any woman. These last words rushed out. I waited for him to continue. Men are the opposite. Callous, far too competitive, nothing to like. I'd hate my twin if I had one. His words triggered the memory of a conversation years ago in the back of a smoke-filled pub. A friend had reeled off a series of names, all work colleagues. I can remember the list even now. There was Dave in operations, The Cube, Simon in finished goods, Andy B and Frosty. Those were the exceptions, my friend said. Everyone else he could handle in a fight. We had all laughed. Back in the cafe, Guy was snarling. Every man is someone to compete with. You know what Freud said? Freud talks shit, I replied. He said, and Guy shifted his accent into mock German, a man's neighbour is a temptation, someone to exploit for work, seize his possessions, use his wife, to humiliate. He's someone to torture and kill. Thank God we don't live next door, I said. It might be true in some sink estate, but not here. So aggression is all about class? I was on dangerous territory. There was something odd about Guy tonight. I wondered if he was on drugs. The girl at the counter shouted my order. Turning with relief, I swapped a few words. She was a fabulous distraction and seemed to have stepped right out of a Lempica painting. Her skin was polished, smooth as metal, with a perfectly even finish. She possessed a striking blend of contrasts, chiaroscuro made flesh. I saw her 2 weeks ago. I was running late, so of course the queue was gigantic. Hovering in the doorway, I'd been deciding whether to wait, and then I saw Guy near the front. Pushing through, I greeted him as though we were together. I'd given my order and slipped him a few coins to cover the bill. When the waitress served him, I'd noticed how much she was flirting. She fluttered those dark eyelashes and swept the coffee black hair from her eyes, exposing the nape of her neck. I was a little disappointed. Not in Guy, he'd just smiled back. I mean, he's married, we both are. My disappointment was with her. Tell me a secret, Guy said. What like? Surprise me. I'm not sure I've got any, I lied. I'll make one up. He sat there, thinking. I didn't like his smile. The skin on his face and hands was dry, sprinkled with coarse black hair. He had a tendency to rub his hands together, like a fly on a carcass. Guy was a combination of fauvist and organic, an indistinct figure lurking to one side that still colours the canvas. He was making me uncomfortable. Susan once told me that any man can be read as easily as a book. Scratch deep enough and they're all beasts, she'd said. I suddenly felt exposed. Got it! His voice was loud. You've thought of one? I was edgy. You and her. He gestured towards the girl at the counter. That's ridiculous! I hadn't meant to sound quite so pompous. The correct response would have been to laugh, but he was getting under my skin. There's plenty of proof. Ridiculous! He was enjoying himself. I thought back to his strange remark. You're turning inside out. He laughed. I let the conversation die. A customer ordered a drink, and I watched to see whether the waitress flirted with him. I tried to do it surreptitiously because I didn't want Guy to see me looking at her. The waitress seemed to avoid the new customer's eyes. I glanced back at Guy, who was adding some uneven spikes to his doodle, stabbing the pad with his pen. His eyes were blazing. We sat in silence while the customer waited for his coffee. The girl began to speak. The moment she opened her mouth, my wild-eyed companion started howling like a wolf. This was a high-pitched howl at full volume, not a child's imitation. Everybody in the cafe stopped. The howling finished, and Guy soothed his throat by taking a swig from his drink. What the hell was that for? I asked. The waitress girl tried to speak a second time, and again, Guy's howling swallowed every word. She stopped. So did the howl. She started again, and her accompaniment was right there. She tried saying the words quickly, staccato style. Guy stayed in time. A perfect duet. What are you doing? You tell me, he said. I could feel fear winding through the cafe. The girl's eyes were wide open. What big eyes she has, I thought. Let's go, I said to Guy. I still felt the need to remain vaguely civilized. His only reply was a laugh. I bundled him out. There were patches of evening sun in the road, and we stepped off the pavement to walk in the fading heat. At the bottom of the street, we parted without a word. From a distance, I heard him give one last howl and pictured him with his head thrown back.
There's a wolf and it follows me. On black days, he knows where I'll be. I can feel him there in his endless stare drags across my whole body. Heart beats and I'm on my own. Have to reach